All right, hello everyone. This is going to be a great call, a great discussion here. So I have my laptop, as Deanna mentioned, so if any of you guys have questions throughout, well, that's kind of the point. We want you guys to engage and ask questions so we can really understand your breath, understand how that can impact your immune system, and just how to stay calm during this time and pretty well during any time that we're experiencing stress. So this is just a really good example because we're all feeling this weird energy and we don't really know what's going on. Like we do and we don't. So it's this is a great test for all of us to see how we can bring our body into a calm state even when there's external stress being applied. It's all about controlling our internal environment.
So I just want to share, Joe Dispenza has a great book called Evolve Your Brain, and he states in his book that 90% of people seeking medical assistance is a result of stress-related disorders, and that's even before this crazy time that we're in. So stress is something that is impacting us all the time. But the beauty of our body is that we have this ability to keep our internal system calm through understanding proper diaphragmatic breathing. And one of the very first books that really brought this light to me was The Power of Conscious Breathing by Eckhart Tolle. And he's mentioning how when we breathe diaphragmatically, we are in the moment and there's no stress in the moment. When we breathe through the muscles of the upper chest, we are creating a different brain frequency that is stress-based, and it connects us to thoughts of past and future. So no matter what, we can be in a really calm environment and not have any external stressors impacting us. But if we're breathing through these muscles of the upper chest, our internal world is still going to feel stressed. And from a postural perspective, we need to understand the mechanics of what's going on with that. So just to get a really good understanding, your diaphragm is a plate of muscle. It's the foundation of the rib cage. When it is moving up and down in the body properly, it is giving all of the organs, everything that's going on in through here, a continual massage. And one of the reasons that we go for massage is to improve circulation, to improve blood flow. So the act of diaphragmatically breathing itself gives the heart, the lungs, the stomach organ, the liver, gallbladder, pancreas, kidneys and adrenals at the back of the body this continual massage so that we can keep these organs properly fed and clean. So if this is our reality and we are actually proper posturally aligned, which for the most part most people aren't, when we do encounter some external threat or stress, what happens is we reactively hold the breath. So what this does to our posture is we go, whoa, something scary happens. So we pull in. The adrenal glands get pushed back to the back of the body, and they secrete stress hormones, which gives us added strength, whatever it is for fight or flight, so that we can respond appropriately in those moments.
And what's super interesting about that, it's a very addictive hormone. Like stress and cortisol is actually addicting to a degree because we're in that state of fight or flight, and you might feel like a little bit more of a superhuman in the moment because you're like, wow, I can just keep going, but your system's in stress. If you do that for a prolonged period of time, your body's going to start to wear down. That's why we talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, because when we're breathing diaphragmatically, we're connecting more so to that parasympathetic nervous system, which is bringing us more in the moment, and our body can actually heal and recover. So that's why we talk so much about diaphragmatic breathing, because when we're doing block therapy, we're healing. That's the main intention of doing this, is to recover the body, make sure we're in the right state. If we are super stressed, and I've been in times where I'm very, very stressed and I'm trying to block, and it almost feels like there's resistance against the block. And it's really weird because I was mentioning that to you the other day. There's times that will happen, and that's because I'm in that sympathetic state. So you have to just calm down, just really spend some time in that belly position to get the breath going. And for some people, it can take 3 minutes to get it going. For some people, it can take 5. If you're in a certain state of stress, I've been in the belly position for over 10 minutes just to get everything calmed down and going. But then you feel absolutely incredible after, and it's almost like hitting that reset button.
So the reality is, again, is that we aren't in this proper alignment. So when we succumb to unconscious breathing, the body is in this chronically collapsed state, which is why 90% of all medical assistance is stress related, because ultimately the cells first and foremost need oxygen to thrive. So think of this muscle, just get a visual, because we don't see inside the body to really grasp what's happening when we don't support diaphragmatic breathing. So here we have this floor, it's a foundation. And like any foundation, if it's not strong, everything up the chain is going to be affected. So, and again, we weren't really taught how to be conscious breathers from babies onwards, so we lose that. For me at age 50, you know, my generation, we were belly breathers from the beginning, and then pain, fear, and stress cause us to reactively hold the breath, which is really what aging is. It's the accumulation of gravity over time with unconscious posture and no breathing. So this is where we are now. So the diaphragm doesn't have that opportunity to move up and down in the core anymore. So it's kind of like a frozen shoulder. We have a frozen diaphragm. Now, if you have good shoulder alignment, you've got really great range to move your shoulder in a whole bunch of ways. You might have limited shoulder movement. You might only be able to go there, or you might have a completely frozen shoulder. So all of these really are a result of the fascia and alignment. So now we have a diaphragm muscle. When it's moving up and down and we have proper alignment, we are able to feed. I've heard there's anywhere from 35 to 100 trillion cells in the body. Whatever the number is, the diaphragm is what feeds blood and oxygen to all of those cells so that they are properly fed. It's also the muscle that removes the majority of waste from the body. Even 84% of weight loss comes through proper exhalation, as we learned in a 2014 study done in Australia. So when we collapse over time, as we all do, we're dominant on one side. So for me being right-handed, I tend to collapse more into that left side. So my diaphragm is still going to be working, but it's not going to be working at 100%. Now, what if I've really, say I had a really stressful moment or an injury, and it really impacted me and it kept me in this freeze response? We might have hardly any of that diaphragm muscle working on our behalf, and we might be completely chest breathers. And I see this in my practice because I teach people how to breathe diaphragmatically, and some people are really great. They might not be doing it, but they can access the muscle. Other people don't even know how to find it at first because it's so frozen. So we're all in the spectrum somewhere of using the muscle completely to not using it at all, and somewhere in between. But the reality is we can give ourselves the opportunity to get this muscle working on our behalf so that we can handle what's going on out there. And whether it's a crazy time like this when we are all impacted with stress, or simply normal everyday life as we know it, we are living as though we're stressed 24/7. And that's something that we have control over and that we can change by understanding some concepts of proper diaphragmatic breathing.
And I like what Tammy Gibson said here. Stress causes dis-ease, which leads to disease. And that's so true, because when we talk about stress, we talk about holding the breath. And then if we're not breathing and we're in a state of fight or flight, then we're starving our cells of oxygen as well. And oxygen is alkaline, which is going to help with disease. So absolutely, it's interesting how it's all so connected, and it's very simple when you just understand this. And that's the beauty of it. That's like, we fully believe that the body can heal itself in any state it's in. And a lot of people talk about that too. So we just have to be able to give the body the opportunity and the time to heal itself by just following simple steps of how to breathe correctly, how to calm the mind, how to be more in the present moment. So
I also want to just share a little bit about how this virus is actually affecting our respiratory system, because if we understand the lung anatomy, the majority of the alveoli are at the base of the lungs, which is why when we breathe diaphragmatically, and this was through Stephen Cope's The Quest for the True Self, where I learned this number, that we can feed up the body up to 6 times, 600% more oxygen. And I've stated this before, and some people they fight back because they think, well, there's no way I can breathe 600% more oxygen into my lungs. It's not about breathing oxygen into your lungs. It's about the absorption from the lung into the bloodstream, as well as the release of the toxins out of the body. So at the base, that's where the majority of these alveoli reside. So when we breathe through the belly, we pull that air deeply enough into the lungs for that absorption, and with that full exhalation, we move the waste out of the body. If we're breathing from up here, the challenge is that there's a little sprinkling of alveoli at the top upper rib or at the top of the lungs. So there's a minimal amount of absorption as well as toxin release. So now we get this infection or this virus, and it is impacting the area of the upper lungs. And the result is this really sticky mucus that's blocking our ability to breathe. And it's kind of terrifying, right? Because, you know, we don't value things until we lose them. I mean, you don't probably think about your baby toe until you have a blister on it and you can't wear your shoes that you want, or it hurts to walk. So we all breathe. And the diaphragm is this beautiful muscle. It's under both our conscious and unconscious control. So
no, that's a really good point. That's perfect timing, because Kelly Sefton just said,
hi Kelly,
do you have any tips for remembering to breathe correctly as we go about our day? Because as Deanna just mentioned, it's under both our conscious and unconscious control. So if we don't think about breathing, we're still going to breathe to survive. But if we consciously connect to breathing diaphragmatically, then we're able to breathe more so throughout the day all the time. And that's what it comes down to. The more you practice breathing diaphragmatically, the more your body's going to remember that action. It's repetition. It's how often are you doing that? It's like practicing anything, really. That's my response. But the more you do it, the better you're going to become. Even those little buddy bands we have, we're actually going to be coming out with some cool things in the near future. So even looking at the logo on your wrist, that can trigger, posture breathing. Okay, so if you're in line somewhere, or you're walking, or you're on your computer and you're feeling stressed, you look at your bracelet and it's like, right, okay, let's align the rib cage, the shoulders, have everything connected correctly, and let's breathe through the diaphragm and reset. So whenever you're feeling really stressed, just think about that, just clicking that reset button, because it changes so much in the moment. So yeah, repetition, kind of like anything else. Do you have anything to add about
and use your pain, because we all have pain. Use those moments when suddenly you feel really anxious, or suddenly you're driving and a crazy thought comes into your head, or you hear something on the radio that just puts you in that freeze mode. Use those moments to remind you to breathe, because that's when your breath is being taken away. And I just want to share too that our bodies are built for this. They're built to breathe right. So it's the most natural thing for us to do. But because we haven't given our body what it needs, we've frozen out of alignment. And I've shared many times the video, The Life of a Cell by David Belinsky. How many people are on this planet? How many billions of people?
7, 8?
7, 8 billions. Okay, so there's
7 to 8.
Sorry,
No, it's 78.
7 to 8 billion people. Okay, there's anywhere from, I've heard, 35 to 100 trillion cells in the body. And when you watch this video of what goes on in one cell, every single time it brings me to tears, because we are so incredible. But we don't see the cells. We see a face or a hand or a body or whatever, but we don't realize all that is going on, all of these cells working so hard to allow us to move, to think, to create, to breathe, all of these systems that are going on without us even being aware of it. The cells are working so hard on your behalf. So when you watch that video and you really get this amazing understanding of how incredible our bodies are, and yet we really don't pay attention to it. And in fact, we beat the crap out of it if it doesn't look the way we want it to look, or if it doesn't work the way we want it to work. I mean, I was one of those people, 50 pounds overweight, hating my belly, and sure enough, it stayed there stuck and big and full and yucky because I hated it. As soon as I started giving it love, that's when things started to change. Giving it love, giving it breath, everything is connected. So no matter what, we can control to a degree what is going on inside of our bodies, even when we have no control over what is going on in the outside world. And that is really the message that we're here to share with you. So
absolutely, yeah, that's so important. And just like the concept of believing and allowing the change to happen, so many people resist against certain things because they have a different belief. But the mind, body, everything is so connected and it's so powerful. If just the concept of believing that your body is going to change for the better, like it's going to, we have to understand that concept and how powerful the mind really is. I'm just going to look here to see. if you guys have any questions, any topics about, any subtopics about this topic that you want us to discuss, just type in the chat here. I'm live, I can see everything coming on, and we'll be answering you.
Yeah, and I do just want to talk too about fascia and why, if you have not been a conscious breather, why there's a little extra work that needs to happen. And we are giving a free gift to teach you how, with a partner, how to open up the rib cage and to access this muscle better. If you are in our block community, we've also given away one of our virtual intensives for breast and lung health. It's a 2-hour intensive you will keep for life. So anybody that buys our starter package, you're gonna get this intensive because this is really important. It's all about really opening up and creating space in the rib cage so that we can make sure that everything is moving out that doesn't need to be in, and we're creating space for oxygen to come inside the body. And again, if we look at that video, The Life of a Cell by David Belinsky.
Yes, that's perfect. I'm just putting that in right here because somebody had the question. Sorry about that.
Perfect. Now imagine all that's going on in the cell. It's like a universe of activity, and everything is synchronized depending on what cell it is and what is needed in the moment. That cell needs space. So block therapy, first and foremost, is about creating space in the body. The video that we're also sharing to do with a partner, it's about creating space in the rib cage. As long as there's space, there is flow. And going back to this virus and what it's doing to people with issues with breathing is all of this mucus is sticky and gluey, and it's getting in the way of flow because there's less space. So when you see people that are really contracted in the shoulders, really pulled in their body, they are blocking their channels for flow. And it's all flow. It's lymph flow, nerve flow, everything. Mm-hmm. So we need flow. We need to be able to keep those, and it's kind of comical in a sense, because before everything got really strange in the world and everything was shut down, I was saying to Quinn, because we live in a high-rise downtown, and normally, you know, at rush hour, you see the roads are like pummeled with traffic, and so flow slows down. But right now there's lots of room for flow. Everybody's inside, nobody's on the road. So we want to create that scenario inside our bodies where we don't have congestion. So imagine right here is the main artery leaving my heart right in through here, and I've got my stomach organ, heart somewhere around here, my left lung somewhere in through here, and I'm right-handed. So the typical posture for that right-handed person is to collapse over to the left to keep that right side free for action. So just imagine this area being compressed and the weight of everything pummeling down right on top of that. So now my heart has to work extra hard to try to push blood flow out of this tube that is now squished and squeezed and compressed. We have less space, and that compromises flow. Same as up here. If we're trying to breathe air in and we're in this collapsed posture, the shoulders are up and around, we've basically taken away space for flow.
And how do you think you're gonna feel? Especially, like, think of this, if you're collapsed, and that was such a perfect description, because if your main artery, your aorta, is getting clogged, your stomach, everything's like this. Imagine staying like this for a full day. But then imagine the anxiety that you're gonna feel. Like your main supply of blood and oxygen, that tube is being compromised. But now imagine staying like that for a month, for a year, for 10 years. Like you're gonna be in a constant state of stress and anxiety, and it's just so hard for your body to be able to function. So that's why so many people feel such a relief of anxiety by just doing block therapy alone, by just doing the belly position, by doing just some of this rib cage work, because we're creating enough space in the body so that all of our organs, our systems can function optimally. That is so important.
It's also why 90% of people seeking medical assistance is related to stress, because this is our reality.
Right.
The majority of people are in this state, but it's slow going. So it's not like it's this immediate from good to bad. It's this chronic decline, and we're so adaptable. Our bodies are so incredibly adaptable, which is a gift and a curse. Because, you know, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say, talk about the fear-stress cycle a bit here, because this is exactly what's going on with majority of the population right now.
Right. So there's a pain-fear cycle, pain-stress cycle, whatever you want to call it. We get caught up in this vicious cycle. So let's talk about pain. We all have pain. And again, if you don't understand what pain is, really pain is the cell It's like the baby crying. Pain is a language that the cell uses to let us know it's needing some assistance. Pain is not the problem. The fear of pain gets us caught into this spiral. So when we have fear, pain, fear, and stress, they cause us to reactively hold the breath. When we reactively hold the breath, we're pumping out these negative stress hormones that in a moment can be life-saving, but chronically actually cause us to become very sick, and our systems just simply don't work properly. So we want to understand what's going on, and when we do get thrown into these pain, stress, or pain, fear cycles, we can take that fear away by connecting to the breath. So with block therapy, referring to pain, we seek pain on purpose. And people that don't do that might think that, well, why would you want to seek pain on purpose? Because pain is a language that the cell uses to let us know that it needs something. Mm-hmm. And the brain can only handle so much pain. I mean, a lot of people are in chronic pain and they have to live with a lot of pain, but every single cell that is pulled away from proper alignment, which is every single cell, experiences pain to some degree because it's not situated where it's supposed to be. So just a bit of a different discussion on fascia. Again, we have, I'm just going to say 100 trillion cells because that's something I've heard. So let's say we have 100 trillion cells. Every single cell has a position in your body that it's supposed to be in to function optimally. When it starts getting taken away from that position, it's getting pulled and tugged on, and it's getting squished as it starts to migrate further and further away from its natural resting place. So now it's getting squished. What does that mean? There's less space. When there's less space, there's less flow, there's less food, and there's more dirt. We become acidic. We have pain because now we're asking those cells to still do our jobs, and we don't even know what the majority of those jobs are because so much is just happening unconsciously in the body. But that's what pain is. The cell saying, listen, like, you're asking me to do this big job, but you're not giving me what I need to thrive.
Right.
So when we start blocking, what's really cool is we're actually moving into tissue deeper than what we're consciously aware of. So you start to connect to the deeper pain in the body, but you also release that. And that is so empowering because when you do that, now we have a release of that fascia that gets stuck on the bone with a force of up to 2,000 pounds per square inch. And I first read that with John Barnes' myofascial release years and years ago. So that's common knowledge. That is how strong that fascia will magnetically seal onto bone. So imagine, again, if we've been sitting like this for 30, 40, 50 years, it's not like we can just sit up straight and get this diaphragm to move properly. There's a process, but we make that process really easy. And again, with the free gift that we're giving you, if getting a block isn't something that you want to do or something that you can afford, we're giving a free gift away. You do need a partner, but we're all isolated with our families right now. So there's probably somebody that you can ask to do this work, and it's simple. We've laid it out really simply, and what a beautiful gift to be able to help your loved ones feel better.
Right.
I mean, there must be a lot of stress. I mean, we both live in the same building, which is lovely, but I still live alone because that's kind of how I want to live, right? Right. And suddenly, like, if your kids are at home and there might be, anywhere from 2 to 6 kids in the household, and both parents are there, like that could get pretty zany at times. Yeah, but if we can do things to make each other feel better, we might be a little kinder to each other as well.
A little calmer too. Yeah. This is a great question. Regarding stress, etc., blood pressure medication, is this wrong?
The blood pressure medication is required because the heart is having to force blood through a tube that is now smaller than it should be. So I mean, the nice thing about changing the alignment is you can work your way off of needing medications by improving your breath and improving your fascia system. So if people need medication, it's what's needed. But the goal is that we start doing the things that are right for our fascia and our breath so that we can work our way off of needing those. I hope that answered that question properly.
No, that was great. Okay. Why some runners, boxers, etc., who practice hard and heavy cardio training seem to age faster, looks crustly, etc., although they are breathing more than everyone, similar to rusting on metal?
Very great question, because again, you might be breathing really hard, but that doesn't mean you're breathing deep. So again, remember, it's all about absorption. It's not about how much air we pull into the lungs. It's about how much oxygen gets absorbed into the bloodstream. So I agree. I mean, you see it all the time. That marathon runner can run 26 miles and then at 50 years old, they might drop dead of a heart attack. So why does this happen? And that's the reason that it happens, because we can still make really, really strong what we have available, but there's an end date to that. If we keep our cells aligned and we keep them filled with oxygen and we keep them clean, that end date changes dramatically. So again, I mean, we talk a lot about anti-aging, and really, this is just a fast version of aging is what we're going through right now, because everybody has stopped their system from working, and it's the full conscious exhalation that's really the anti-aging design in the body, because that's when the diaphragm is lifting us up against the force of gravity. Gravity is this constant force pushing us down. We basically get shorter and wider as we age, but that conscious exhalation lifts us. So we can go through time without accumulating the effects of gravity in our tissue by conscious practice. So conscious posture, conscious breath. And then what the block does, as well as what that video that we're sharing with you does, it decompresses. We're also sharing my book, Fascia Decompression, The Missing Link in Self-Care.
It's a book you guys all have to read.
So it's really the journey of the last 20 years of my life, and how I kind of came onto all of this stuff through my own personal challenges, through patient work, through wanting really to teach people that form of self-care. Because initially I was creating fluid isometrics, which is a bodywork practice I teach to therapists to do on patients. But my real passion is self-care, and here's the perfect example. We can't go and see a therapist today. Suddenly we don't have that opportunity, but you can still look after yourself. And I even like to say, it's not about looking after yourself, it's about looking after your cells. Think of your cells as these gems of gold that are inside your body that you need to look after. It is the most important relationship you have on the planet is with your cells, because
100%.
I want to be as good as I possibly can to everybody, the people that I love, but if I kind of suck inside, I'm not going to be the best version. And I mean, believe me, I've been there many times, and I mean, I still go through that where you feel yucky, you don't feel good, you don't feel like you're being your best, and we're all human. But at the end of the day, we do have some control, and we in fact have a lot of control by looking after ourselves.
Very, very well said. Here's another question. Will people that are shallow breathers or are ill feel worse before they feel better when they start diaphragmatic breathing?
Well, yes, often, and that's the healing crisis. So that is really where that community support is so important, because when we start heating the system, all of that stuff that's been stuck, it's going to come to the surface and come out. So that can be in the form of feeling like you're getting a cold or getting a fever. Your body's turning up the heat so that it can kill the stuff that's been trapped. It can be a skin rash, it can be diarrhea. If you're having any women's issues, it can be increased bleeding. It can be emotional releases. Suddenly you might be driving and you might start crying, or you might feel anger, or you might feel guilt. Old stuff coming to the surface. I, for one, personally in my 20s, when I was really messed up, I used to have a lot of nightmares. And now once in a while I'll get them, but in my understanding now, it's there's some areas of past garbage that are now coming up so I can view it and say goodbye to it. Mm-hmm. So anything that comes to the surface, and that's part of the challenge, because when it comes to the surface, it's scary. Because it's already something we've encountered. We didn't like it, so we pull away from it. Now when you're moving into the body and you're starting to get everything flowing, we got to kind of live it again.
That's how the body works.
Yeah.
If we're putting positivity, we're replacing the old with the good. The old needs to leave. So when we go through a healing crisis, it's not something to be scared of. And of course you can use some other tools to help with the detoxification process. We won't really jump too much into that, but some people like to have a Epsom salts tub. Some people like to do a juice cleanse. Whatever it is, those things can definitely help and assist push those toxins out. But the body alone is such a magnificent, efficient machine. It's going to rid all of these things out of our body correctly, as long as we're keeping up with the work that we're doing. So if we're feeling a healing crisis, that doesn't mean stop blocking. That means keep blocking and pushing it out. Your body's starting to change. This is a super exciting time if that ever happens. So whenever we go through a healing crisis, in that moment for the first time. It can be a little intimidating or a little scary, but now we're like happy when we have a healing crisis because we know how we're going to feel on the other side and what our body's doing. It's working so hard to get rid of this garbage because now we're bringing the body with things it actually needs.
And people, I mean, again, we're all starting from a different place. Some bodies might be really, really toxic, and like you gotta live through the healing crisis as well. So if you're coming from that place, it's a process, and it's understanding that, yeah, if you do too much and you're getting thrown into a scenario, back off and come back at it. Like, we all get to dictate our pace with how we do this, and that's part of the journey is knowing yourself and knowing what you're doing and being connected to a community that is here, because again, that healing crisis brings fear, and then it can throw you right back into that pain fear scenario, and a little understanding. Also, when we're sleeping, that's when we do the most healing. So if suddenly you're really tired because you start doing this, that's a good sign, because that means now you're giving your body the energy it needs to heal. And healing takes work and effort inside. Again, it's all these things that are happening that we don't see. So we just get scared because it's like, holy smokes, like, why suddenly do I just want to sleep? It feels like I could sleep for a year. I've gone through that too. And that's because your body's repairing, and it takes a ton of work to repair. So sleep when you can, if your body's calling you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another question. I am new to block therapy. I can barely do the belly position. Are there some tips to gradually get to the 3-minute belly position?
Absolutely. So a couple of things. If that belly position is just too intense, a bed or the floor without a block, or blocking the side ribs to begin with, because if we are so compressed and tight and that belly is under a ton of pressure because of that collapse, by working the side ribs, we soften that rib cage, so then we can start to lift the rib cage up and we start to decompress. Remember, the missing link in self-care is fascia decompression. So that is a really great way to start decompressing. Also working in the hip flexors, even bringing the block a little bit lower, it will probably feel less intense if you work a little below the belly button and then you start moving it up to that belly button. Now, that belly position is truly so important. Think of when we are developing in the womb, we are connected to our mother through that belly button. And I've read that the 72,000 currents that distribute the life force through our entire body all culminate in the belly button. So this area is, there's so many things going on in this area. So by putting that pressure consciously with that breath and creating heat in this area, it really is the key. But again, obviously, if you can't do it because it's too painful, these are ways to work toward doing that.
And that's even what Barry Gibson was saying up here.
Hi guys, Tammy Barry, hi.
If I can't find it, but he pretty well said, belly, belly, belly position. If you only have 3 to 5 minutes a day to just do something, do that belly position. Absolutely.
And if you don't have a block and you don't have a partner, lie on a book. Or lie on that hardwood floor and use that floor to breathe into the floor, because it is pressure over time. That's the key. The block is just a tool. Basically, my book on fascia decompression, it's the fact that pressure over time with breath creates a release of that fascia. It creates an influx of oxygen and blood flow. And we want our cells to be like nicely blown up balloons. You blow up that balloon, there's still gravity affecting the balloon, but it's almost like it defies gravity.
Right.
It stays afloat until that air comes out. And that's how we want our cells to be. So we don't, because we'll feel heavy. If we're compacted and we don't have a lot of oxygen flowing through our systems, our bodies feel very dense and heavy, and they are. So when we start breathing, we start pumping up those cells with more and more and more life and lightness, and then we can move through life feeling like we're almost floating. In yoga, they call it effortless effort. I love that, because of course it takes effort. Everything takes effort. But to get to that point where the effort is effortless almost, like you're kind of walking on a cloud, like that's what we want to do. We want to float through life in a way that our body is sustained and healthy and flowing. That's the key.
Well, going back to what you mentioned about feeling heavy, if we're full of restrictions throughout our body as well, we talk a lot about the magnetic seal. So if we have really powerful, like vortexes almost in our body that are sealing and pulling us down, that's gonna feel heavy. So if we have adhesions everywhere, we're gonna feel heavy. So when we release the adhesions, we're gonna start to feel lighter, but we're also oxygenating simultaneously. So it's like we're getting another 2-in-1 benefit there. We're gonna feel lighter because we have less forces pulling us in different directions all the time, but then we're also oxygenating the cell so that it's lighter, more buoyant, and healthy. This is an interesting question. In my mind, I am not stressed, but my body is saying a totally different story. My stomach is upset, jaw teeth are killing me, and my lovely hot flashes are back. Thankfully, I bought a block. So, I guess that's not really a question, but hey, that's perfect. Starting with that starter program is going to be the best thing that you can do. And
that is the thing. Your mind may not be involved in the equation of the stress because we have been unconsciously breathing through our lifetime. So we've become very used to this chronic state of collapse that we're living in, and everybody's living in it. So it's not like it's outside of the range of normal for us. So what's really nice is that when you start connecting these dots, like you may who knows what might surface for you, some past memories or whatever, but it's really a beautiful cleaning process, and it really does change the game as to how we age in general, as well as how we deal with stress. And when we are on the other side of this crisis, and we will be on the other side of this, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be really affected negatively because this added stress to an already stressed system is going to be so impactful in a negative way. So if we can get in front of that, and today we can start applying what we need to do and what we can do, what we do have control over, when we are on the other side of this and the world starts to repair or rebuild whatever is going to be needed, we're going to be in the position to be in the forefront and say, okay, we're ready, we're raring to go, because we have healthy bodies. And that's what we are going to need, is a world full of healthy, strong people once we're through this, to start over, rebuild, and to continue on, because we're going to continue on.
And this is the perfect time and opportunity to start taking care of your body. So a lot of people are doing the opposite because we're so scared and we're in that fearful state. So right now, we don't know how long we're going to be in quarantine. We don't know how long we're going to be kind of put in this unknown, awkward state. So why don't you start working on your body, on your mind, so that you're ready for when this is over. And this is the perfect time. It's almost like, I don't want this to sound a little rough, but like there's not really any excuse to not do that now. And you can do everything at home. So just starting with the techniques, the classes, if you don't have a block, that's totally fine. We have the class linked in the comment section right now, so you can go there. All you have to do is fill out your name and email address, and then we're going to email you Deanna's book, and we're going to email you that class where all you need is a partner just to work on each other. And starting now is, again, the best opportunity, the best time, and then you're going to feel the changes. And if you really like that, then you can see if block therapy is for you. But yeah, I just wanted to add that, but we have some more questions here.
Perfect. I love questions. And one other thing to add that we can all do, and again, I do know how challenging it is when the last thing you want to do is smile, but it really does make a difference. And it's proven, it's science. When you smile, form creates function, function creates form. So when we smile, we feel happy. When we feel happy, we smile. So if we don't feel happy and we smile, it's going to actually change what's going on in the brain, and it's going to start you on that path. So force it. Look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm going to smile even if I don't want to.
It's so true, though.
And laugh at yourself.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we talk about that a lot in the classes. If you've done the starter program or if you're in our membership, Deanna talks a lot about smiling when you're in painful positions, and it really does change the perception of pain and how your body views the pain. So if you're smiling or you're laughing and you're in a painful area, you are definitely going to feel a reduction of pain. It's bizarre how it works, but it's pretty incredible.
They say laughter is the best medicine, and think about what's happening when you're laughing. You are strongly exhaling.
So true.
So, again, if you're at home with your family, like, tell fun stories, like, do things together that engages that laughter.
Yeah.
That is probably the fastest way to strengthen your full exhalation, is going through bouts of laughter on a regular basis. Laughter yoga is great for that. I mean, it's all about that. So let's get this core engaged in a healthy way, not through sit-ups, That's not going to get that diaphragm going. It's not going to engage the core. It's going to strengthen those superficial muscles. And I used to do 400 a day. And all that happened was my body got more compressed and my belly got even bigger, like as if that was the goal.
Right. Yeah, and it's all about, if you're doing any sort of exercise or core workouts, it's all about being very conscious of how you're performing that and still using your diaphragm as your breath. Using your diaphragm to breathe, even when your core is engaged. That's going to be talked about, something coming soon, actually, Block for Fitness. So that whole piece, we'll be sending that out when that's ready, which is super exciting. But this is a great comment. So, and cells are replaced. So if the body is out of place, out of alignment, then the new cells are born into an unhealthy environment, so to speak. So yeah, absolutely. That's why we need to change our state, change our environment to a healthy alkaline environment. Then things will thrive. Go ahead.
Right, and there's a lot of talk about telomeres, and I mean, this whole anti-aging movement that everybody's looking for. Like some of the topics are on those telomere lengths. There's a certain length when it's optimal and healthy, and then as we age, the telomeres get shorter. What takes away that, in our view, is space. So everything needs space. So if I'm compressing here and I'm compressing, and this is how I'm aging over time, those cells don't have the opportunity to keep those telomeres at a certain length. When we keep our body aligned and we keep everything fed and clean, there's no reason for those telomeres to start becoming shorter, which means we don't need to go through that same aging process.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if we're talking about a brain cell, a heart cell, a muscle cell, a skin cell, everything comes down to it. And even anti-aging for the brain. Like, think about this beautiful container we have, our skull, and we've got this brain inside. The brain has a certain alignment as well for it to be properly fed and clean. But if we're leaning over like this for decades, now the brain, because of gravity, it's going to start getting compressed against the skull. Parts of the brain aren't going to be properly fed and clean, and that's going to affect our brain function. And whatever part of the brain that's getting most affected first will be what we see. And for some people it might be memory, for other people it might be vision. I mean, everything is interconnected. And I think the biggest message that we want to share is that, yes, this is a scary time for all of us. However, no matter what, we can still keep our insides calm and safe. And on the other side of this, we can move towards a healthier body every single day by understanding what the cell needs. And what the cell needs, first and foremost, is space. As long as there's space, there's room for flow. As long as there's flow, oxygen and all of the nutrients required get into that cell, and all of the byproducts. It's kind of like our cells are like a car, like there's going to be exhaust, waste. It needs to get taken out of the way. All of the functions that go on, they create a waste that needs to be removed. That's all part of what happens when there's space. When we take space away, everything becomes compromised. So the great news is we have control, and it doesn't cost us any money, because it doesn't cost us to breathe. It doesn't cost us to keep our bodies properly aligned. And that's one of the best things ever, because people are struggling, but you don't have to rely on anyone else, and you don't have to buy anything. And again, we're giving away a gift to show you how you can access a deeper breath. But even if you don't have that person there or this block, you can breathe into the floor. You can start to really work towards creating more room for that muscle to work on your behalf. How are we doing here?
Doing good. We got lots of questions and comments coming here. I'm just looking.
We're covering all of them?
Yeah, great book and well worth the read. Absolutely. Again, you can download the book and get the free class. Just in the comments below, you'll see that there. It'll just bring you to a link. This is cool. Try taking your blood pressure before and after blocking an intensive session. I'm on medication and will likely be for the rest of my life, but blocking daily keeps it in a very healthy range.
Thank you.
Very, very cool.
Who said that?
That is Jeanette Robinson.
Hi, Jeanette. Thanks for that. That's wonderful.
That is amazing.
Yes. The life force is what ultimately keeps us alive. As soon as we die, we don't have that life force in us. And they say that there are 72,000 currents that distribute the life force to all of the cells in the body, and the chakra wheels are also designed to distribute that life force, and it's driven by the breath. At the very base of the sacrum, there are receptors to, there's a lot of science behind it, which I'm not going to get into. There's a great book called The Science of Breath that everybody should read. It's fantastic. It even connects the reason why we should be breathing through the nose. The base of the nostrils have 3 turbinates in each to distribute oxygen properly to all of the cells. So if we're breathing through the mouth, then we're not making use of this. So it's all connected through the breath, through nose breathing, how we move the life force to all of the cells to keep everything open and healthy. And of course, when we collapse, now those chakra wheels are affected, we create blocks. So scar tissue from injury surgery, compression from unconscious posture, they all act the same. They're all basically dams to flow. So these are the areas that we want to really understand. And from a perspective of block therapy, we call them cause sites because there's cause sites to our pain. A lot of people might have shoulder pain. One of the cause sites to that is going to be the way that the rib cage collapses on the other side. You can see when I do that, my shoulder gets pulled over, and this is driving that alignment. So again, the cells are migrating away from where they should be. So now they're under tension. So if I have a shoulder pain and I go for a shoulder treatment and I don't address the cause site, I'm not going to be really getting any more than a temporary improvement in blood flow from whatever treatment I have. So flow is the life force, and the life force is driven through the breath. So with the techniques that we're sharing with you, you will increase. And it's really cool because we're going to do a little video later about this, but it's kind of neat because if you take a dry, dirty sponge that's in whatever compressed state that it's in, that's basically the body of the majority. It's you could probably snap it in half because it's dry. You can't penetrate it because it's dry. You can see the little cells in the sponge. They're kind of twisted and compressed and turned, and it probably doesn't have perfect alignment. Now put that sponge into water. Water is a life force. Put that sponge into water, that sponge opens up, it comes back to life. You can even squeeze it and wring all those toxins out, which is really what the breath and the block do in the areas that we work. And now you have a clean sponge that is properly aligned and it's open and spacious. So things can come into it and we can wring it out and we can clean it out. You know, like red wine's perfect. You spill some red wine, you can see it. The sponge absorbs it. If we don't clean that out and we keep using that sponge on other dirty things, we keep pulling dirt. And our fascia is basically a big sponge that's going to absorb your environment. So the breath, the exhalation, is a way to keep our internal environment clean because we're squeezing. We always tell people it's a relaxed breath until that end when we squeeze the belly small because we want to move that last bit of waste out of the body. So think of your whole body being like a sponge, and your breath is the water that gets in there, and we wring it out so we can keep everything clean. So the breath does deliver the life force to all of the cells.
This is a great comment, which is so true. You'll never be constipated again once you start block therapy and the belly position. LOL. That's so true.
Well, and yeah, for me, who in my past, not my past life, in this past life, in my younger years, I guess I should say, that definitely was an issue for me. And to not have that issue, because again, like I think when you don't have a good bowel movement every day, you're stuck in the past. You're stuck in what you ate the day before or the days before. And if that becomes a chronic issue, now all of your cells are getting all of that waste dispersed throughout, and it just kind of keeps creeping through the whole system. So when we can start cleaning out the cells in that way, as well as through the breath, you know, again, we're keeping our system clean, and we just feel better for that.
This is day 1 of this journey for me. I have a lifelong scoliosis and potentially a frozen shoulder. Are the tips for getting started the same for everyone?
Yes, absolutely, because at the end of the day, even if you came to me with a fractured ankle, I'm still going to start in your core because we want to get your breath strong. As soon as we start activating that diaphragm muscle, then we have a capacity to heal everything else that much more efficiently. Right. So of course, everybody, like we have specific programs for certain things, and I do assessments. So I see people and I will prescribe a certain order of things, but no matter what, we're always going to be starting in the core, because if we start somewhere else and we haven't engaged that breath and created a little more space there, then it's just not going to be as efficient.
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can relate, Judy. I have an Under current of stress, I can seem to distract myself for a while, but then it returns. Blocking helps decompress me, so I'm thankful for my block.
Aw, wonderful.
Awesome. I'm trying to block later in day as I'm finding I've been sleeping way better.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
And that's the cool thing too. Blocking will help you sleep better because oxygen is required to get the brain into the relaxed state so that you can go into that deep state of sleep. It's also energizing. You know, some people love doing it in the morning or before a workout because it gets everything flowing and going, so you've got that much more life force running through you basically.
This is awesome. So that was Judy, and then Judy said this right after. I was eating 60 milligrams of melatonin, or taking 60 grams of melatonin a night, trying to get a decent sleep. With blocking, I'm down to 0.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. That's an amazing testimonial. Wow.
Very much so.
Wow, I'm
Wonderful.
so happy. That's incredible.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the face, right through here, this is the major lymphatic drainage site for the body. So when we are breathing chronically through the muscles of the upper chest and in this posture, we're basically blocking the flow. So anything going on in the face, if we're collapsed in through here, it's having to come out through the skin as opposed to coming out through the right channels. So definitely, if you have eczema, some people have it on their arms, wherever it happens to be in your body, it's just letting you know that there's a lack of flow because it's basically a fungus. And if that fungus isn't leaving through the proper channels, it's going to come out through the skin. And if it's chronic and it keeps coming out, it's just letting you know that you got to really get that breath involved so we can start moving everything out of the body.
Can you talk a bit about whether belly breathing feels the same or different between the belly position and other positions?
Well, it feels different in that you've basically got this pressure in there. So it's a really good opportunity to strengthen it. So it will definitely feel more challenging to breathe in the belly position because you're being forced to breathe through this compression, same as some of the other positions like the anterior waist, where we're diving deep in here, and that's kind of getting in the way of that diaphragm from moving properly, but it also helps to strengthen the diaphragm because we have these areas. So it feels different in that only because of that external force that we're putting in.
Right.
When you're doing, say, the IT band, the breath should feel, well, you don't have that there, as you'll feel pain though.
Yeah.
That IT band is intense.
And whenever you're in any position, as you're inhaling, your belly should be expanding. As you're exhaling, your belly should be getting smaller. When you're breathing in the belly position, you're doing the same concept. You're inhaling into the block, and as you exhale, that's when you're going to most likely feel more of the pain starting to surface because of the block's going to start sinking deeper in the belly, which is good. And the longer you spend there, you can reach the psoas muscle. We have a phenomenal psoas series in our membership. So yeah. It's still the same concept. It's just going to be a different sensation because we're directly on there and we're giving the diaphragm an opportunity to be strengthened. So as we're inhaling in towards the block, that's resistance against the diaphragm. So we're strengthening the diaphragm. So when you get off, it actually should be simpler to breathe and access the diaphragm.
And just for anybody too, when you're lying on your back, if you simply place your hands on your belly, when you inhale, the belly should get nice and big. When you exhale, your hand should start moving down. So for some people, if they feel tentative about even breathing into the floor, lie on your back and inhale, think pregnant belly, make your belly as big as you can, and then let it fall and make it as small as you can. But again, we don't want to force the breath. So if you hear yourself breathing, that's your body saying, okay, now you're trying to force this through. Try to bring it back so that it's under a little bit more of a relaxed state of movement. And that takes time too. So don't get frustrated. And you might not even be able to find it right away. And that's the point, because we've been so frozen out of alignment for a good chunk of our lives. It's not something we can just necessarily turn on overnight. But again, remember, we are built to breathe this way. The body wants to be healthy. It wants to breathe right. So as soon as you start giving it some attention, it very quickly responds, and it's that daily work that adds up. So if you only breathe into a book for 5 minutes a day, 3 weeks from now, your breath is going to be a lot stronger than it was before. So that act alone will make a difference in how much you will be able to oxygenate your cells as well as keep your cells clean.
Would the belly exercise or the belly position work for burning in the chest?
Yes, yes, because burning in the chest is going to be indicative of stress in the chest. And stress in the chest happens because if we're not using that belly to breathe, we're using these secondary muscles to do the work for us, and that's not their job. You know, it's like think that you have 100 people that are in your business and only 20 of them are doing the job of the 100. Those 20 people are going to be exhausted, they're going to be burnt out because they're doing the job of 100 people. And that's what's going on in the body when we're not breathing right. So your cells are still having to work, we're still forcing them to act, to move, to have our heart working, to digest food, but yet we're asking few of them to do the job. So yes, that would be something that would make a huge difference in that regard.
This is cool from Tammy Gibson again. This is a formula I teach, E plus R equals 0. So your response, which is the R, to an event, which is E, determines your outcome, which is O. So the event plus your response equals your outcome. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. We've got an event happening right now. What is our response? Because that will determine the outcome. Thanks, Tammy, that's great. And the thing is too, there might be no event going on, but our response is that unconscious stress inside of us, leaving us as part of that 90% of the population seeking medical assistance where stress-related issues are the reason. We don't have to be that person. We can change our situation. And you know, sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom in order to do that. And I think in a lot of ways, that's kind of where we are right now in the planet. I truly believe this is needed. I think that the planet is undergoing some major shifting that is necessary because we all know we were moving in a direction that the world couldn't sustain healthy life with what's going on with climate change and all of these things. So this is creating an opportunity for all of us to reset. And it's an amazing time because we have time. We're not going to the hockey games or kids' sports or the musicals or the family gatherings.
Any event, really.
Anything,
yeah.
anything, really.
Shut down.
And we don't know how long for. So let's get excited. Let's laugh and let's use this time for self-care. Let's make ourselves the most important thing on the planet right now because we can.
It's all your perception. It's all on how we perceive what's going on in the world right now. We can stay in that fear, stress mode and for however long you want, but you're not going to feel better. Nothing's going to change because that's a blockage. If you can switch that around to something positive, okay, this is an opportunity. Look at the positive in any scenario, and when you can start doing that, everything's going to start to change for you. This is a very interesting question. Here we go. If sleeping starts the healing and you're taking sleeping medication, does this interrupt healing?
Well, that's a great question.
That is I've never
Now, the thing
that.
is, if you're taking sleep medication, it's likely because you're not breathing properly. So your body doesn't have the capacity to go into that sleep mode because it doesn't have the oxygen available. So if you're having to force sleep, your body is not in a repair mode, it's in a stress mode. So it's letting you know that you're in stress mode. So of course, when we're dealing with any medication, it's not like we would say to anybody, start blocking and go off your medications. That's not the reality that we're in. We want to work toward a healthier system and a healthier state. So when you start blocking, you may notice that you don't need those sleep medications and your body starts to heal on its own more naturally so that you can actually use that proper sleep for repair. I hope that made sense.
Totally. Breathing, blocking, water, and healthy food. I 100% agree.
Awesome.
Yeah, healthy food. And when it comes to healthy food, it's healthy food for you. Of course, some people will eat meat, some people won't eat meat, some people, their body works with certain foods and not with other foods. So again, that's all. We don't talk that much about nutrition right now. Maybe we will a little bit more in the future, but ultimately it comes down for the right nutrition and nutrients for your body and your body type. Everybody is different. So it all comes down to just taking the time, being patient to see what foods and how your body cooperates and reacts to eating certain foods.
And on that regard, I would say basically eat clean. Like, we don't want to eat anything that's been overly processed. That's the
exactly
key. Just try to eat clean and hydrate.
Edna said something in Spanish. Actually, you're taking Spanish. Do you know what that says?
Sorry, I got a little sidetracked lately. I can say I want to go. I can say I don't want to go to the doctor. Because I'm breathing right, so I'm not one of those 90% that's overly stressed.
I have frozen shoulder too, or I had. This blocking will help with that so much.
Oh, good. And I just want to talk a little bit about that, because it's really about those cause sites again. When we are blocking properly, we're not just addressing where the symptom or the pain is, we're addressing what's causing that. And that's part of any therapy that we need to understand. No matter what you're getting, there's more than just the pain in the body, there's also what's driving it. And we've just actually, today, we are sharing our calves All Things series,
right.
Free for anybody with a block. It goes in our membership and it's there for life, but we're offering this series through this week. And in my opinion, the calves are one of the major cause sites for everything going on in the body, whether it's issues with size and shape, chronic pain, migraines, anxiety, because remember that 2,000 pound per square inch force, the calves, the fascia winds around this big triangular bone. There's a lot of surface area, and fascia will grip to bone. So all of this surface area and our unconscious posture and the calves being the furthest away from the diaphragm, they become so frozen and they impact the whole system. So if you have migraines, for example, and you're working through the areas that make sense with the migraine, every time you get up and you take a step, that alignment that's going on in that lower leg is going to whip you right back into that negative pattern in your fascia. So again, it's understanding that we need to look at the fascia system as a whole. If I had a towel and I started tugging on it, the whole towel gets pulled into, they're called energy cysts actually, and craniosacral therapy was the first time I learned that word, the energy cyst. So, if I'm constantly collapsing here, I'm going to have an energy cyst here that's going to drive everything into it. So we want to open up these energy cysts, and we want to make sure that we're addressing things. So I skewed, I'm sorry, but basically my point is the calf series is available now as well, and it's a fantastic one to address just the whole body and your fascia alignment.
And if you have a block, just log into your account, and you'll see on the dashboard there's a link right there that will bring you to that class. Okay, I am an essential worker, so this time is very different for me. I am enjoying blocking and taking it to work with me to use for a few minutes during the day, and I am also being more aware of my breathing. Thanks. That is awesome.
Thank you for all of you that are put in the forefront. Like, you really are the heroes. All of the people that are having to be out there still working with the population. Thank you so much for that, because we have the opportunity to hide away and to not be around people that we don't know. And there's a lot of you out there that are, and hats off to all of you, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for this time and attention today. That's from Allison Baird. Thank you, Allison, for joining. Tammy, I have migraines, and understanding this is so important. Thanks. Awesome. So that's actually the last question that I have right here on my feed. So, one more has just came in.
And then we'll get off the call so all of you can dive in and get to your breath and start feeling great.
I have felt the same way about nature cleansing itself to start another chance to get it right. It's telling us something is really wrong and we need to pay attention. Mother Nature is reminding us she is and will always be boss. It is akin to pain sites and how it comes from the core, i.e. the boss, Mother Nature. And do you know what? Super interesting about this. I actually heard in Italy, because Italy's really shut down, in the canals, because nobody's going in the canals right now, dolphins are starting to go into the canals, fish are starting to flood into the canals, the water's becoming clear. It's really cool, because it seems like the planet is doing a reset as well. So the planet's doing a reset, we may as well do a reset as well if we can. So again, thank you for that comment.
Yeah, let's all be healthier on the other side instead of the other direction where a lot of people will be going. We don't have to, and Yeah, let's make sure we're here for each other as well. So
Absolutely.
Please join our community if you have any questions, whether you're blocking or not. We're here for you, and somebody is on there 24/7 to give continual support and guidance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good question. Is this a video? If so, will this be available to review? So yeah, what we're gonna do, we're gonna keep this Facebook Live up on our Facebook page, and then we're also going to upload this to our YouTube channel with a better recording, and we have our lav mics on as well. Thank you so much, Deanna and Quinn. Thank you, Anita.
And just thank you all, like, for being here too. I mean, this could not be done without you. We've got such a beautiful community of blockers, of hearts, you know, that are always willing and able to give advice and guidance. And this is all this is about, is sharing what we all can do together to keep moving forward and be healthy and enjoy life.
And this is what Kathy had to say. Was struggling with spending $100 on a piece of wood and feeling now that this may have been the most important decision of my life. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. So again, for anybody that purchases or has already purchased a block, you get the virtual intensive for breast and lung health, which is so important at this time. So enjoy it, to your health, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and stay healthy.
And we'll see you next week, same time.